because we could always scrub the beginning, although we never seem to.
You know, I mean, you can't just start. It sucks when it's getting right into it.
Yeah, I was thinking about
Warm up.
anaerobic digesters because we were just this morning, today, because we were throwing away food waste or whatever. Made me think of your digesters, and then I thought, oh yeah, I was looking up a little bit about them. Of course, compost piles are aerobic digesters.
Yep,
right.
That's the difference.
And then it reminded me that we talked about doing a poop thing. I mean, an episode on poop.
The POOPISSode.
And then I remembered that
we need to do a real shitty episode.
That's right.
Just a real crapster.
Like we haven't done 30 already.
Hey! I mean, we have a cheesy episode.
Yeah.
Molten salt reactors. 3 of them.
So we got a couple salty episodes.
Yeah. Salty. Cheesy.
And a Chuck E. Cheesy.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Sickly. Now poopy.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this in the past just because I was just trying to make sure people knew I read a book one time. And I misremembered that it was one of the appendices, and it's not. The 2 appendices, one is on Argot, and the other one is on The Convent. Oh. He's so funny.
Victor Hugo.
Yeah.
Les Mis. I have not read it, so you've turned the tables on me.
Oh, you could always just watch the movie. But you don't get the appendices that way.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, it's just a chapter in between, some exciting plot. Valjean has just, spoiler alert, I believe, Marius is almost mortally wounded in a failed student uprising, and Jean Valjean is taking him to the sewers. And then Victor Hugo says, "Oh, you are interested in what's happening with the characters? So sorry. Here's an essay on poop."
Yeah.
May I?
Go. I mean, hey.
Paris pours 24 million francs a year into the water. That is not a metaphor. She does so by day and by night, thoughtlessly and to no purpose. She does so through her entrails, that is to say, her sewers. 25 millions is the most modest of the approximate figures arrived at by statistical science. After many experiments, science today knows that the most fruitful and efficacious of all manures is human excrement. The Chinese, be it said to our shame, knew it before us. No Chinese peasant, at either end, according to Eckberg, goes to the town without bringing back, at either end of his bamboo pole, 2 buckets filled with the unmentionable matter, and it is thanks to this human manure that the Chinese earth is as fruitful as in the days of Abraham. Yeah. That's just a taste.
Yeah.
Hugo could go on.
And he did.
To use the town to manure the country is to ensure prosperity. If our gold is so much waste, then on the other hand, our waste is so much gold. It is the flowering meadow, green grass, majorum, and thyme and sage, the lowing of contented cattle in the evening, the scented hay and the golden wheat, the bread on your table and the warm blood in your veins, health and joy and life.
That's very true.
That's probably enough.
Yeah, I mean, one way we had a whole episode titled "Poo Nitrate," I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we were talking about nitrogen fixation because that's kind of the big one. That's usually certainly not always the main limiting nutrient in soils because you have to have a lot of nitrogen to make protein, right? Sugar is very easy to make because it's just carbohydrate, carbon, water.
Okay.
Nitrogen takes a lot more energy to fix and make it biologically active
out of the atmosphere.
Out of the atmosphere. It's the most inert gas because it's basically as low as you could get chemically bonded. It's a triple bond between the nitrogen atoms.
I see. Very stable.
Incredibly stable.
Which means inert.
Yeah. And if it's stable, it's not biologically active. So how the fuck do you get the nitrogen if you don't have it available?
Even though it is, if I remember right, the most in the air around us, it's the most abundant.
And one reason, and it just kind of tautological, one reason it's so abundant is because it doesn't react with everything. So it accumulates.
Of course.
If the plants stop producing oxygen, the oxygen is going to react away and slowly get bound into oxides in the soil, and the oxygen goes away. Nitrogen doesn't give a fuck. I don't go away. I don't want to react with anybody. So it's piled up. It's kind of a trash dump, you know. Mm-hmm. The inert thing, the thing that doesn't react, sticks around. It takes an incredible amount of energy to break a triple bond, and so. Not surprisingly, not coincidentally, nitrate is often the limiting factor in an ecosystem. Because if you have enough sun, if you have enough water, there's usually enough salt in the soil, there's usually enough chlorine, you know, the minor elements that your body doesn't, whether you're a plant or an animal, but nitrogen you need a lot of, and you're going to use a lot of in your regular metabolism.
Whose regular metabolism?
Plant or animal.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's often the limiting nutrient, and nature is incredibly good at, once you do have a fixed nitrogen, you take a nitrogen gas and turn it into ammonia or nitrate or nitrite, something much more reactive, bind it with a hydrogen or bind it with an oxygen. It doesn't like to lose it. I want to hold on to that. And so very slowly, over literally billions of years, the amount of fixed nitrogen in the biosphere has slowly increased. It's not, you can't do it suddenly. You can't be like, oh, I'm just going to plant a bunch of beans and legumes and I'll increase the nitrogen. It slowly will in a trivial amount, but it's taken billions of years until the year 1910 for the quantity of fixed nitrogen in the biosphere to reach quantity X. And then humans with industrial nitrogen fixation doubled that quantity in a century, you know, which is extraordinary to think about. We talked about Saudi Arabia doubling its oil fields. Well, human beings have doubled the fixed nitrogen in the atmosphere in 1 century. It took 3 billion years to get there, and then in 1 century we doubled it again. No small feat.
No. There was one of these actually important technological...
Profoundly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was done, and like nitrogen is also there in nitrocellulose, TNT. If you can't industrially fix nitrogen, you can't industrially make gunpowder. So.
Oh, yeah, he mentions...
Yeah.
Sorry.
Napoleon fought all his wars without nitrogen fixation. Where do you get the gunpowder?
You have to spend money to get it. He says that here. What do we do with this golden dung? We throw it away. At great expense, we send ships to the South Pole to collect the droppings of petrels and penguins.
Yep.
And the incalculable wealth we ourselves produce, we throw back into the sea.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Here's a chapter in this one is about gunpowder and how the Chinese would use, when the nitrates which accumulate in the floors of dwellings are not collected for this purpose, the soil goes to the fields to be used directly as fertilizer or maybe worked into compost. But before that, this man, the gunpowder guy, goes from house to house through the village, purchasing the soil of floors which have thus become overcharged, sick with nitrate. He procures a sample, tests it, and announces what he will pay for the surface 2, 3, or 4 inches. He leaches the soil to recover the calcium nitrate and then pours the leachings through plant ashes containing potassium carbonate for the purpose of transforming the calcium nitrate into the potassium nitrate or saltpeter.
Whoa.
They invented gunpowder.
Right.
The floors of their fucking huts.
Is this like bird and bat poop or bird and bat and human poop?
This is the floors of their houses just from the traction and tracking things in and food scraps and things like that. So they didn't have China, as far as there's probably, they've got a lot of territory. I'm sure they have saltpeter mines and shit like that. But also in the villages, they would extract the potassium nitrate from the soil of the dirt of the floors of their village huts.
And the gunpowder guy knows what to do with it to make it into saltpeter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
And turn it into gunpowder, yeah. So it's an interesting question to say, where did Napoleon get his gunpowder from? Because the British Navy probably would have blockaded him from the big potassium phosphate mines in the South Pacific, the Chilean salt. The guano deposits from seabirds, millennia of seabirds pooping in the hot desert where it just dries out and turns into perfect, fertilizer, guano.
Light, sweet, crude.
Yeah. Chile used to control the agriculture of the world, essentially. It was a bottleneck. Yeah. And because nobody knew how to fix nitrate out of the atmosphere. And when Fritz Haber,
right,
a Jewish German chemist, figured out how to do it, at high temperature, high pressure over uranium catalyst, it changed the world. And he got a Nobel Prize for it. But he also worked on chemical weapons for the German army in World War I.
Zyklon A, I believe.
No, that's for the Holocaust. Or Zyklon. He made am I wrong?
I'm not sure. I'm a vague memory of a radio lab, but I think Zyklon B is the gas chamber one, and I think Haber may have been responsible for something called Zyklon.
I didn't know that.
1.0.
Oh,
I'm not sure.
Okay,
I'd have to check on that.
It changed the world, and it was a major thing that allowed Germany to even think about fighting World War I. Because if they hadn't had the ability to fix their own nitrogen from, the air, which you can't blockade with a navy, Britain would have blockaded them from the saltpeter mines and the phosphate mines in Chile, because the German navy had no chance.
So now it's famine time.
Famine. Their soil would have. German soil is kind of poor, actually, even historically, kind of sandy. And yeah, Germany would have starved and run out of gunpowder fairly quickly. But once they had that, damn. There's a reason why terrorists use fertilizer bombs. If you have ammonium nitrate, it's autocatalytic, NH4NO3. The oxygen combines with the hydrogen, boom. That's what Timothy McVeigh used in Oklahoma City. Some of the worst industrial accidents involve ammonium nitrate. Most recently this year in Beirut, that massive explosion.
Right.
That was ammonium nitrate. Yeah.
That was like was that fertilizer storage or was it? Okay.
Yep. Colossal failure. Somebody fucked up so bad. You can't store shit like that long because it's hygroscopic. It absorbs water vapor from the air, and it's very reactive on its own. You can't pile up ammonium nitrate all over the place, except in very careful conditions, and the country's been falling apart, and somebody fucked up, and look what happened. Damn.
Oy, oy, oy.
Same, they use ammonium nitrate in construction and destruction, because it's fairly stable in the short term. It's like a very safe explosive compared to others.
Okay.
But in the long run, you pile up silos of it and walk away.
Don't fill a warehouse with it.
Damn.
And
how many people died? Several hundred
or whatever.
Yeah, it basically leveled. It's a bomb in the heart of a city. Oh no! What the fuck did you think was going to happen? But yeah, you spread that nitrogen out into fields in the right doses and the right quantities, and you've got productive ecosystems. You've just overcome one of the major bottlenecks. So now, if you have enough nitrogen in your soils and you use it properly, the next thing that limits you might be water, and if you irrigate enough, or you plant the right drought-resistant plants, maybe the next thing that limits you will be sunlight or temperature.
That's interesting. So there's so much you actually have sort of manipulative control over
in ecosystems, yeah.
And then, your sunlight,
right?
Your rain. Well, we can be clever and build irrigation systems or whatever.
Yeah. But I mean, the story of this century has been the story of let's liquidate all of our resources as rapidly as we possibly can and call it civilization. We blew through the oil. We blew through the coal. We fixed way too much nitrogen and just fucking blew through it instead of... And I don't mean we're going to run out of nitrogen in the atmosphere. I mean, we doubled the amount of fixed nitrogen, because if you look at the way they fertilize industrial corn and soybeans and whatnot, you fucked up. They're doing it wrong. I don't care what your fucking yields are. I don't care that a bushel of soybeans is $5 and therefore, oh, we're solving hunger. No, you're not. You're delaying it. You're delaying it because you can't destroy your ecosystems and just, oh, well, we have all the natural gas we want, and so let's fix a lot of nitrogen and just fuck the soil. They apply too much nitrate.
Huh.
There's a dead zone at the mouth of the Mississippi. There's all these dead zones in the ocean. Well, why is that? They over-apply fertilizer. It goes into freshwater ecosystems. It flushes into the sea. It causes a plankton bloom, far more than the ecosystem can normally hold, or the circulation of water. The plankton sinks, it decays, and it sucks out all the oxygen, causing a dead zone. It's the size of fucking Maryland. If you're a fish, you swim in there, you die. You can't breathe.
Dang it.
What do you do if you're a mussel or a clam or a barnacle? Can't move. So it's funny you say, like knobs and dials on an ecosystem. They're hooked to everything else. There's no such thing as one-to-one causality.
Well, and Hugo is talking about how, the Parisians or the contemporary Europeans of his time, are not only depriving the countryside of fertilizer, but also poisoning their rivers.
Yep.
With the human excrement.
Yeah.
I mean,
there was one
at the same time.
Yeah. They've turned a resource into a poison.
Each belch of our cloaca costs us 1,000 francs, and the result is that the land is impoverished, and the water made foul. Hunger lurks in the furrow, and disease in the stream.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because the mechanics of civilization accelerated the draining, the sucking up of nutrients from the countryside into the city. And instead of returning it, they dump it. They've turned a resource into a poison because he wrote that.
You lose on both ends.
You lose on both ends. Very foolishly. Whereas the Chinese do the exact opposite. They recharge it. You can see, apparently, like in more traditional Confucian world, let's call it East Asia, there's a ring of green around all the cities because that's where all the heavy fertilizer is. And human nature being what it is, it wants commerce. We live in cities. So your richest soil is on the rim around the outside of the city, That's kind of changed because of this population explosion and whatnot. But apparently in the old, we say ancient history, but 1800s is modern Chinese history. And they had cities of millions and millions of people back in the 1800s. They know how to live at denser populations than we do. Their culture is more inclined towards it. Just basically. But yeah, in some way, you think of how much, here I am surrounded by all my friggin' squash. But let's say I wasn't a farmer. You look at the food in your fridge. It's gone more miles than you have.
Mm-hmm.
All that energy and all the energy that went into packaging the food, refrigerating it, preparing it, cooking it if it's pre-cooked, now freezing it, keeping it frozen, and then all the energy that went into the fertilization and the growth and the energy to move the water, to irrigate it, the slave labor, you have to pay a pittance to people from, Honduras and stuff because fuck them in our economic system. And we dump it. A turd is a very concentrated resource. From the perspective of a soil microbe or an ecosystem. And
we pay to dump it.
We pay to dump it.
Again, we lose on both ends.
We lose on both ends. So, and there's another one about the...
This is like a wizard's battle.
It is, isn't it? In 1908, the international concessions. So this is the century of humiliations for China. So the international concessions are the the Portuguese quarter, the British quarter.
Spheres of influence, or
foreign, enclaves. So the international concessions, loaded word, of the city of Shanghai sold to one Chinese contractor, just one, for $31,000 gold, the privilege of collecting 78,000 tons of human waste under stipulated regulations and of removing it to the country for sale to farmers. So the Chinese not only don't waste it, they turn it into a resource. The city is making money off of its own excrement.
Right. I think I remember you telling me about that ages ago. Like, there were literal, sort of farmers' consortiums bidding on a particular city's
competing against each other.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Auctioning.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we're paying some private contractor to help us deal with our.
Yeah. It becomes an expense.
Right.
Instead of an asset. It's insane. And I have real experience working at the nuts and bolts level of the city of Tacoma, specifically with its TAGRO program. And they try to say that, we make more money on TAGRO, which is a Class A biosolid, than it takes to make it, right? We make a little bit of profit. I'm kind of doxing them, but it's not really true. But it's still a good idea to have TAGRO, But in this,
that's almost inching closer to what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Putting the nitrate back into the local, municipal or regional soil.
Absolutely. It's I believe all wastewater treatment plants should go in that direction, and many of them do. We don't throw sludge into rivers anymore. Thank goodness.
Right.
We used to. But a lot of the sludge gets turned into less high quality biosolid, something that you can't handle safely. Class B, so it still has a lot of diseases in it because it hasn't been pasteurized. TAGRO, City of Tacoma TAGRO, it's literally pasteurized. It's the same parameters as used for milk, temperature over time. So it's not sterile. It's just been hot enough, long enough that it kills human pathogens. So I think there's less human pathogens in TAGRO than background soil.
Okay, gotcha.
So, but it's expensive to do that. The reason Tacoma is able to pull it off is because electricity is very cheap around here because of all the hydroelectric dams. But yeah, you have to, every phosphate is accounted for, and it moves through an ecosystem with consequences and ripples of consequences that are ad infinitum. Same with nitrate, same with ammonia, all nutrients, everything. There's no such thing as no consequences in ecosystems. And we're going to look back on this, the 20th century is just wow, you ignored consequences to the point of suicide almost, You'll almost want to have gone extinct, but you won't. We won't. But, to sit there and 5% of the world's natural gas, the whole fucking planet, is used as a hydrogen source for making ammonium nitrate. N2 becomes NH4. You need hydrogen for that. 5% is not a small amount,
No.
And as we burn, the rest of the natural gas, we're eventually going to go, we can't make fertilizer cheaply anymore. What the fuck do you do then with 8, 9, 10 billion people in the world? Uh-oh.
Starve a lot of them, I suppose.
Or you start looking at that turd and going...
as long as they're all pooping.
Yeah. Well, I've already got the nitrate.
It's not going anywhere.
It's not going anywhere, is it?
If I don't throw it in the river, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, why would I throw this away? It's worth something now. Huh. We got to start acting like the Chinese have been doing for 40 fucking centuries.
I was just impressed when I came back to this that
I am too. That he
that
knew about the
Hugo
Chinese.
knew. Yeah, he does this.
How
this
did he
other-
know?
This
Was
other
there-
one's cute, if I may.
Yeah.
It's just silly. It's flowery, but I like it. Economically, one may sum it up as follows. Paris is a leaky basket. This model capital city of which every nation seeks to have a copy. This ideal metropolis. This noble stronghold of initiative, drive, and experiment. This center and dwelling place of minds. This nation town and hive of the future. A composite of Babylon and Corinth would, seen in this aspect, cause a peasant of Fujian to shrug his shoulders.
That's yeah. Well, this is turning into a wizard's battle, isn't it? Nothing. I mean, it's a peasant of Fujian.
Yeah, in the text, it's romanized as Fokian with a K. I had to look it up to make sure what I thought was probably true when I read it. He probably meant Fujian.
Probably. It seems so trivial, but from what I've read, I've read more than a few books about Chinese farming, pre-modern farming, not the way it is now. And I think the idea that a farmer goes to town and he's got his little bamboo yoke and the bucket, I think that's absolutely literally true.
Okay.
Because he's going, you know what, I
It's
have
not
to go
some...
No, it's not some stereotype.
Right, not some cartoon.
Yeah, because he would go, I have to go to town anyway to do something, you know, some legal matter or whatever. I have to buy a new blade for
Right,
my
or maybe
plow.
I'm selling chickens or...
Yeah, or I have a social obligation.
Huh.
Well, I'm not going to waste the trip. I got to go there and back anyway,
I'll
so you know what?
bring back some fertilizer.
I'm going to bring back...
I'm a farmer.
I'm a farmer. I'm going to bring back 10 pounds of human shit on my shoulder because I'm going to make the trip anyway. So I'm not even going to waste the miles I walk by foot.
Right, I have to go somewhere, which means I have to come back. I might as well make the comeback useful too.
Yeah. And I mean, here's the quote. Nothing jars on the nerves of these people more than incurring a needless expense, extravagance in any form, or poor judgment in making purchases. And that was in the context of Western stoves use too much fuel for the amount of cooking output.
Oh, interesting.
Return on investment.
Sure.
Energy return on investment. So,
This is Farmers of 40 Centuries?
Yeah, Farmers of 40 Centuries by F.H. King. I highly recommend it. And it's beautiful because it's a snapshot of a vanished world right before it vanished. It was written in like 1908 or 1910. So there was a lot that was about to happen in China.
That's right.
In that century. Oh, my God. Like the last emperor, Pu Yi, is still alive.
Right, that's basically the tail end of the century of humiliation.
Yeah. And the beginning of the revolutions and invasions. And all
civil
that.
wars. And
Yeah. So, I mean, the Qing dynasty is still kind of there. You know, there were still bureaucrats from the Qing dynasty. When he wrote this, there were still thousands of men who had gone through the imperial exam system, who were, presented Jinshi. And then it was
working civil servants at that point.
Of a pre-proto-industrial civilization, like it had the culture he's describing has more in common with the Han dynasty or the Zhou dynasty than it does to the modern day China, because there's almost no engines. There's no electricity. Fascinating. And all the little vignettes, all these little just incredible. They had fresh meat every day of the year in markets anywhere, in any city in China, with no refrigeration. How's that possible? Because the markets were so saturated and so finely tuned, they knew how to slaughter in time.
Wow.
They had hatcheries for chickens, where they wouldn't let the hens nest it themselves. They would have fertilizer, and they would very precisely regulate the temperature in these little stacked bamboo
ceramic. Oh, okay. What are they?
Heating it with embers, and they would check the temperature with their eye socket on the eggs, very precisely turning it. It's unreal. I highly recommend the book. It's incredible to think about. It can be done. An incredibly disciplined pre-industrial, pre-electricity society of the highest civilization, the highest culture. Poets, bureaucrats, an emperor. It's unreal.
Oh, you get it. You get everything. Poets and bureaucrats.
And musicians.
You love it.
And in the cities, there's professional carpenter. You know, all the professional trades, you know, are there. You have cooks and you have healthcare standards. You know, you have doctors, all that other crap, and they don't have electricity. Western civilization is on a crutch. It's on a broken crutch. It's a crutch that will betray us in the wrong way.
What's the crutch?
Waste. Extravagant waste of our future generations' resources. Hey, we don't have to be civilized.
You mean right now?
Yeah, right now. We can make up for it. You know, we can have ambulances and streetlights and all this other stuff by just wasting everything and calling it good. Waste, including turds. You know, you have to fucking deal with this shit. Mm-hmm. Or else you will poison your ecosystems and you will deplete your soil. So who gives a fuck?
And starve your
citizenry
eventually.
Yeah. You know, Fritz Haber.
Despite Fritz Haber.
Yeah. Who's the guy, the Green Revolution? The other guy. What's his face? He got a Nobel Prize for peace. It's a different guy. He's in, oh God, I can see his face. He did the Green Revolution in Southeast Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa and stuff. You know, bringing higher quality seeds and modern fertilizers.
Interesting.
Yeah. But he also caused a population explosion. You know, he didn't cause it. It happened, you know. But, I mean, the scale of what we're facing, ecological overshoot. We better get real good.
It's always weird to, as a dummy, to read this stuff and wonder. I mean, yeah. Hugo's writing this in the second half of the 19th century.
Right.
And he says, Europe is exhausting itself to the point of ruin. I wonder, is it wrong to... Me as a dummy, the first thing I think of is, well, the First World War was kind of crappy. Are they related? I don't know. Just thinking of
we talked about Pompey the ecologist. You know, Italy ate the littoral of the Mediterranean instead of balancing itself internally, economically and socially.
But then again,
are they related?
Fritz Haber, in the same, gives us the means to live outside our means.
Yep, for a little while.
In the same way that we discover the magic liquid or the magic rock that gives us the means to live outside our means.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. I mean, are they related? Yeah, they're part of the same culture.
Yeah.
Right. Well, because I mean, it's not like Confucian civilization is magic, but they are better at solving the problem of living in cities in a civilized society than the Christian world. You know, Confucianism doesn't have an end of the world scenario. Even in heaven, there's bureaucrats.
That's right. Hence hell money.
Even in heaven, there's a guy who has to clean the heavenly horse shit. I wonder if he grows heavenly mushrooms on it. You know,
back to monkey.
Yeah,
that's the job. I think that's the job they first gave monkey.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And there's something
make him a stable. We'll give him the title and make him a stable boy.
Yeah. So, you know, China certainly has its wars, and certainly has its bad times, but it's never had a dark age. And is there a connection between a Chinese farmer so diligent that he's willing to carry human shit 10 miles back and forth at that fundamental level?
1.5 feet from either nostril.
Pretty stinky.
5-pound bucket of... Yeah.
And a society that has lasted that long with that much dignity to it, you know? Isn't it funny how the most visible things are hidden and how the most hidden things are visible? If I can look at a farmer like that and say, how do you know to do that? What sort of man, who raised him? Who gave him that set of ideas?
How did he get so clever?
Yep.
How did he get so efficient?
Where does culture come from? Yeah. So maybe there's a reason why Nanjing is still fucking there. And it was there in the Song Dynasty, surrounded and maintained and fed by these farmers who are willing to smell something bad for a little while because they know it's going to maintain their soil. Korea also does it. So does Japan.
I bet
so does Vietnam.
I bet it wouldn't even smell all that bad for that. I mean,
I work in the sewer. Whew. You get real used to it.
It's funny,
smells like money. That's what we always say to each other. Oh, we do.
Hey, man, that's right with the text there.
Yeah. And they haven't read Victor Hugo.
No, it smells like money.
Yeah. A lot of money and shit. A lot of money and shit.
Geez, I thought there was a lot of money in weddings and babies, but maybe I should get into the shit game.
I recommend it. You're in the guts of a city, metaphorically and literally.
Yep.
Truly, working in Tacoma was a blast. It was the best 2.5 years of my life, just about. And now I'm in the guts of an even a vastly smaller place.
But not so much different.
No, different only in scale.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. If you had, what the Chinese didn't have that I know they would have embraced if they had ever invented it is anaerobic digesters. Those ancient ones, they didn't do it. Well, what the fuck am I saying? When Peace Corps volunteers and others started bringing them anaerobic digesters, Chinese farmers in Sichuan and stuff embraced it wholeheartedly. Absolutely, yeah. And you can build an anaerobic digester with nothing more than bricks and pipes.
But wait, why waste your shit in an anaerobic digester?
It's not wasted. You still get the fertilizer at the end. Exactly.
Of course, the nitrate's still there.
Nitrate's still there, isn't it?
You just get the bonus of the methane.
The energy. Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Yep. Because you're not losing nitrogen, you're losing a carbon, CH4, right? Burn that in a reducing environment, and I can show you pictures of it. And it's the one they're at the base of the house. The human toilet pipes down in, the pig stall pipes down in, and you fire that fucker up and cook your food with it. You don't even have to cut down a tree. If you don't have to cut down a tree, you don't have to spend the time cutting down a tree.
Or the calories.
And then the soil doesn't wash away. And then the tree grows bigger and bigger every year, and you get all the other benefits of the tree. The mulch. The tree is sending down roots very deep and pulling up calcium and potassium from way down, well below the topsoil, where and then you're gonna mulch from the tree, and now that potassium, you've captured it. You've captured it in your net because you're a farmer. You're at the center of a spider web of nutrients and energy. Yeah?
Continue. No, you just mentioned a net. I got to find another thing.
Yeah. And the Chinese, they've been doing this for so goddamn long. Another big point, speaking of a net or a web, is the canal system of China. They kept those canals open by dredging them from the mud, and the mud is valuable fertilizer, so nothing goes to waste. And he taught, you think I'm an obsessive composter? People would make fun of me. They're like, you're getting coffee grounds and shit from Starbucks.
You're
and
like
whatnot.
a mediocre.
I'm nothing.
C minus.
See, I'm a D or an F compared to them.
Yeah.
They're sitting there and they're timing it perfectly, and they're making recipes based on the local stuff. They're like, okay, here's my layer of algae, my layer of mud, and then a little sprinkle of lime, and then another thing. And they are making these incredible compost piles. And they're testing the moisture level on it by hand and knowing when to turn it. And it's exactly ready, exactly when they need it, specifically for which crop they've built the compost pile for.
Whoa.
This one's for sorghum. This other one is for mung bean. And this one's for rice.
I'm not a urban, suburban, or ex-urban sort of middle class.
Yeah. I put it in a pile and forget about it?
That
No.
has a compost pile. No, I'm engineering multiple compost piles for different crops.
Yeah. I learned how to do this from my father and my grandfather and my great-great-grandfather. This house I'm in the courtyard is a compost pile. And we've been composting like this and learning how and getting better and better at it for 300 years.
Right. It's one of these things where if you're uninitiated, you only have one word for a thing, right?
Yep.
Well, that's a compost pile.
Yep.
But, well, what flavor of compost pile is it?
Yep. The vocabulary.
Is it a red compost pile or a blue compost pile or a green? You know.
Yep.
I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah. Variety. You know.
And doing it in the exact quantities they need, and nothing more and nothing less. You know. It's an extraordinary book because all the little vignettes, you know, like they would, when in the north, one of the, you know, just those little images, when they harvest the wheat, they don't cut it, they pull it up. They cut the roots and pile that into a compost pile. They harvest the wheat, obviously, for the bread, you know,
right?
You know, even though it's not making bread. And then they burn the stems for fuel because there's no other fuel source.
Wow.
You know.
So you get the grain that you mill for something starchy, something sugary.
Yep. Carbohydrate. The edible part, the burnable part, and the compostable part.
Whoa.
And then the ashes from the stems are going into the compost pile.
Yeah.
Yep. And you can be sure that the poop that from the wheat that they're pooping out is going into compost piles as well. A closed ecological system.
As closed as it can.
As well as the only open parts are the energy from sunlight.
So really the ideal, on the surface of the earth, the ideal open system, which is only open at the top, which is the sunlight.
They were as closed as a forest. They were as closed as a natural ecosystem.
Or one of these like silly hobbyists, like, oh, I put together a closed terrarium. It can live for...
Yeah, ostensibly forever, as long as the lights are on, right?
Right.
It's unfucking believable because they did it for 4,000 years, and they didn't do it once and that was it. They've been getting better and better. You know, they're like, oh yeah, my great-great-grandfather was when peanuts and potatoes and sweet potatoes and beans and corn arrived from this other continent we didn't know about that the Europeans found, right? And our population went up. Fuck yes, I love sweet potatoes. Never grown it before, but you can eat the greens, and Jesus Christ, look at that yield, you know? Holy shit. And I can pickle the greens, you know?
But not only my system and my technology, but also my culture is such that I can take in the new, incorporate it, adapt it.
They grow the most peanuts in the world, New World crop. They grow, I think they might grow the most sweet potatoes. If not, they're like in the top 3. Huge amount. There's these lovely little, you can see videos of it in, you know, like street food scene in, you know, Harbin. These little sweet potato roasters. These little ovens built to roast sweet potatoes, and they come out looking like little guinea pigs. And they go in and they go out, and, hey, a roasted sweet potato on a cold, you know, northern Manchurian day. Fuck. Beautiful.
Well, you know, I'm sort of skeptical of the one-use kitchen item, but...
Fair enough. Right. But
I have a toaster, so I can't blame him.
Yeah, right? The greatest thing since steamed sweet potatoes. Sweet potato is a hell of a food. I mean, it is a superfood. But today, deep in the bowels of the philosophy of the Communist Party, they are beating it into their heads in public view, saying we are building an ecological civilization. That is a central pillar of Xi Jinping thought. An ecological civilization.
Even if it's just rhetoric, it's
rhetoric
still
matters.
Important that it's being said.
Yeah. I mean,
Probably.
Are you kidding? To say rhetoric, that's like, you talked about there being different kinds of humans. You have Muslim civilization.
Did I?
Yes, you did. We talk about Western civilization. Yeah. We talk about Orthodox civilization.
Right.
Confucian ecological civilization. Why think about that? And I think about the molten salt reactor. You want to talk about energy flows through a society that's willing. I just hope they don't get leaky. You know what I mean? Leaking like an open sieve, like Paris.
That's right.
Because there's going to be so much energy in the molten salt reactor flowing through a civilization like that they will be able to lose discipline and get away with it for several centuries, especially with the molten salt reactor. I hope they don't. They very well might. They might get wasteful like we do, but damn.
I mean, there's nothing like nearly free energy
Holy shit,
to make you
dude.
leaky.
Yeah, yep.
We did it.
We did it.
It wasn't nearly free, but at the time it was.
If you look, I mean, people were. I mean, in the 50s and 60s, the size of those goddamn cars, they were getting like 5 miles to the gallon. Because who gives a fuck?
And life was good.
It was so great, wasn't it?
Folks, yeah.
Yeah, and now that world is ancient history, and we're looking around wondering what the fuck happened. And it's like, yeah, peak oil, they called it.
Why can't I buy a house and support I'm a 17-year-old. I accidentally got another teenager pregnant. Why can't I buy a house, marry her, and support us?
Yep.
And drive a boat.
Yeah. Yep. And
I meant a boat like a big car, but also have a boat.
Yeah.
What happened? I used to be able to do that.
Where's my union protection?
Yeah.
You know? Fuck. It's over. You know, like fossil fuels. Whoops. Oh, no. I mean, that's what I love about the current situation. People are like, well, what's going on economically? Peak oil. What's going on socially? Peak oil. I don't understand why things are falling apart. Peak oil. Why don't we have enough wealth to protect the environment? Peak oil. And I'm sticking to that until we get the fucking molten salt reactor going. And by we, I mean they, because the West can't do it. Energy source. And if you're efficient, you can do more with less. Lo and behold.
Right.
Whoa, what do you mean?
If you're efficient, increasing returns.
Yes.
In a way.
Yes. Efficiency.
I mean, the rich get richer.
If you recycle your turds, you don't have to spend that 5% of your natural gas to even make the fertilizer. You say, we already have the fertilizer.
If you recycle your turds, you don't have to send sailboats across
the Atlantic
to
guano mines in Chile.
Exactly.
That guy who was the guano
or
miner.
to some, tiny island where there's a lot of poop,
There was one, it was Palau or Vanuatu or something. It was a guano island.
Yeah.
And they mined it away, out of existence, the people living there.
They needed it. The people living there.
Yeah, there's a couple thousand Polynesians who live there, but the island's gone. It's been mined out of existence, which is kind of...
When you said Guano Island, you didn't mean a...
It's an island made of guano.
You didn't mean an island with lots of guano on it. You meant an island of guano.
Yeah, literally.
Nice.
It's like a coral reef that was a seabird colony. And,
wow.
They keep pooping.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny about it. Like the reason it's in Chile, the biggest phosphate guano deposits in the world is because ocean currents, there's a huge upwelling there. I wish Muggs was here. He'd talk about the most important fishery in the world is, we could do a part 2.
Poop part 2.
Yeah. The most important fishery in the world is the Peruvian anchoveta, basically a sardine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why does an upwelling matter? It pulls, there's a thin layer of warm water all around the world's oceans. The deep water is rich in nitrate and phosphate and all that other stuff. You can sit there and you could put a probe down there. I'll show you, the thermocline, pycnocline, all that shit. And you go down deep. The light doesn't reach, so there's no plankton. There's nothing to eat the nitrate and all that.
There's no nitrate fixers down there.
That's a different question. There's no nitrate users.
Okay.
Because there's no photosynthesis. The photic zone dwindles away. Nothing to eat the nitrate, and so the deeper layers of the ocean, there's a thin little layer of nutrient depleted water at the surface of the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the middle of the Pacific where it's super warm, everything down low rich in nitrate. Well, if an upwelling brings that shit to the surface in warm conditions, boom, plankton. Boom, an ecosystem.
Okay.
Like magic.
Things eat plankton. Birds eat those things.
Yep. The fish eat the plankton. The birds eat the fish.
And then they shit.
And then and so the nitrate goes from the deep ocean into a plankton, into a fish, into a bird, into a guano pile.
Into a pile,
yep.
Right. But it takes a geologic thing to get it up there to begin with.
And so when upwellings are intermittent, like off the coast of California, the sardine population wildly swings. Because
Right,
it's
it's
not,
so- it's so
whereas in
funny
Peru,
that-
it's very predictable. And it's the richest and most important fishery in the world. It feeds all the other fish. They catch those sardines and they turn them into fish meal. And then that feeds aquaculture all around the planet. It's still important. We just cut one link in the chain. See, we ate up the food chain. Now instead of getting the guano, because now we can fix nitrogen everywhere for fertilizer in the soil, now we've gone one link down, we catch the fish themselves. Now it doesn't have to go through a bird. See? We turn the fish into fish meal, and that's the reason why all this aquaculture is happening, essentially. It's still not sustainable.
Well, it's funny that...
But in California, the upwellings are intermittent, so the sardine population, boom, bust, boom, bust, 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 boom, boom, boom. It's harder to gauge it. And the John Steinbeck novel, Cannery Row, is about that. Sardine canneries. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Sardines are a good fish to eat. They're low on the food chain. They're the equivalent of eating a cow. Because a cow eats grass. A sardine eats plankton, the grass of the sea. Eating a salmon or a swordfish is like eating a grizzly bear. They're predatory fish.
You're a few more levels from
up the trophic
plant.
level. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, it's a few more links.
Yeah.
And there's less bioaccumulation of nasty stuff like mercury.
Well, that's sort of funny too, because why do we eat tuna instead of sardines? I mean, we both...
Because it's delicious. And you catch one sardine, you catch one tuna, you know, there's a lot more to it. It's tasty.
Right, but I'm not trying to eat bear out here.
Right, but we used to.
Honestly,
The oceans are the new frontier, and they're going through the same destructive liquidation phase that the land frontier used to have in North and South America and Australia.
You can never go home again, huh?
You can only do it once, and it's pretty much over. The oceans are collapsing ecosystemically. In fact, we had an episode about that.
That one was a bummer.
It was a bleak one. I wasn't trying to make it bleak, but Muggs had to sit there and tell the truth. but
with some amount of expertise.
There's no frontiers in the Confucian world. The closest thing you have to that is like barbarian versus Zhonghua, the civilized world. But there's no frontiers. They don't do that. They don't say, you know what, we're just going to liquidate this area and fuck it. They recycle their turds. You don't dump anything, They're not perfect. Of course, there's exceptions to it. And China right now is a big problem with overfishing and all that shit. But deep down, especially in their home turf, they're like, nope, we're not going to turn this into a frontier. Everything has to be accounted for. Every turd. You must herd the turds. I am a turd herder.
I've noticed.
It's so rich in terms of nutrients because like human digestion isn't all that efficient.
Right.
We're a very even in our biology, we're a very wasteful species. 20% of your sugar goes into your fucking brain that you can think about titties and food and your social standing.
Obviously, we haven't existed as long as some other critters.
Yeah. This thing is goddamn new.
Wait a second.
This brain. Yeah, right? We're as old as everything else, technically.
But wait, is there anything newer than us except like new strains of E. coli or something?
Well, there's the bugs that have evolved to evolve to eat our stored grain. They're only about 10,000 years old. It's so cool. Mealworms and those. That niche didn't exist.
Okay, we'll save that.
Crazy to think about, isn't it?
But let's see. Modern humans, what, 50 grand?
50K.
But the species...
Draw your line wherever you want. We go back to the first cell. No, I'm dead.
Okay, fine. But you're saying, we're not... Our digestive system isn't very efficient. Right. And yet we exist.
Yeah, fair enough.
And yet we're selected for, at least for the time being.
The human brain needs a whole lot of sugar. And so we sacrificed efficient digestion for cleverness.
For big brains.
Yeah.
Huh,
And the
interesting.
cleverer you are, the more profligate you can be with your gut. Because I can just go and get more sugary stuff. I read an article years ago called Guts, Thinking, and Evolution. We went the path of burn resources fast, die young, and be inefficient. Because it does pay off. Being clever is sexy. So if evolution invests more and more in a brain that doesn't do anything except think, it doesn't help you break a shell or something. It helps you think about breaking a shell.
And it doesn't help you digest whatever.
Yeah. So a gorilla sits there and has to eat plants all day and fucking digest them fairly inefficiently, but it's pooping out something that looks kind of like horse poo a bit.
Well, and a panda.
Or a panda, right. So, well, then what's the success story of a gorilla? Do they just get more and more efficient with their digestion? You know? Right. So, there is a kind of symmetry, strangely enough.
I can't remember what it was.
Because fuck it.
I've seen, occasionally they'll be like, Homo sapiens? No, more like Homo religioso or whatever.
Yeah,
it's
you see that, yeah. Pop science shit.
Yeah, pop science shit. Yeah, it's just funny to think, no, more like Homo bad shit.
Yeah. It's not, it's really not, that's not a trivial way of thinking about it. We became an omnivore that really needs to eat a lot every day and a lot of sugary stuff, a lot of carbs for the brain, to keep the brain going.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
we need the brain because we're not as good as other critters
at digesting.
At digesting.
Digesting efficiently, yeah.
Or even clawing. Or even biting.
Yep.
Or pulling apart.
Yep.
So we invest in the brain with all these sugars so that we can maybe someday make a stone tool or figure out how to open a clamshell or...
Cooking is pre-digestion.
Yeah.
It is. It absolutely is. It's better to think of cooking almost like some animal that has a acid gland that sprays it over the food.
This is the extended phenotype.
Yes, it
again.
is. Absolutely, it is. Yeah. So
Instead of having the acid gland, we have a brain that invented fire.
Yep.
Or
you cook.
Probably noticed it, and then.
I mean, think of it.
Yeah, whatever.
Think of a human. Take a naked human, plunk them down in a forest where it's wet. Like wet, cold forest somewhere. The poor fucking thing is doomed.
Yes.
I can't make a fire. But you throw a goat down the same thing. It's got this little internal anaerobic digester and goes, I can eat these pine needles. It'll suck, but I can do it. And I'll chomp away and I'll make all this saliva and I will live. And that amazing human with its big, amazing, vulnerable brain that needs a lot of carbs is just going to buy... you're going to starve to death. So, we've committed to that, but we need to take responsibility for it. And part of it is...
we need to take responsibility for
our own evolved nature. Yeah.
Our own evolved nature.
You got it. I mean,
for our sweet tooth.
Yeah. Eventually we're going to evolve livers big enough to deal with all the fucking beer we drink. But, or just the enzymes. But, you think of what would you rather step in? Horse poo or cow poo or human? I mean, it's just fucking...
Yeah, I'm on horse and cow and panda every time.
Yeah, or goat.
It's not bad.
Yeah, it's this unoffensive thing, and it's,
chicken, not a big fan of, but...
Yeah, kind of nasty.
Sooner goat than chicken, for sure.
Yeah. So, human manure is so incredibly rich because it's so incredibly efficient.
Oh, that's so funny. I wonder, does the grossness in my individual brain, is it inversely proportional to the richness?
Essentially.
Or no, let me think. Because horse poo's so nice because it seems like it's mostly grass, which makes me think inefficient.
That's actually technically, they don't ruminate. Horses aren't ruminants. They don't chew their cud. They're a hind gut digester. So horses need more grass per day than a cow.
Right.
Because they can't chew it twice. They digest in their hindgut and they move a lot out.
Yeah, I think I'd sooner step in horse than...
Oh, yeah. Cow shit's gross.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Well, never mind. My mathematical theory is already out. It's not about efficiency, apparently.
The poop.
But it might be a...
Well, plant material versus, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
All the...
Yeah.
So it is another major push. This was actually in the middle of this year, strangely enough, right in the middle of, you know, coronavirus and all that, heavily pushing for in China, philosophy, top down, in the People's Daily and China Daily, food waste. We want to minimize food waste. You know, very heavy government. You know, it's kind of ham-handed actually.
Right.
It's like, come on, you know, you're Chinese. You probably already do it better than anybody else on earth. Just throw it to the pigs.
Right, or you're like an urbanite who can't
exactly.
You're gonna throw it away one way or the other. Like,
yeah.
Are you gonna get that missive and say, "Oh, I better buy a kitchen top worm,"
right?
You know, which exists now. You know,
do,
like
yeah.
mealworms or the other types of composting worms.
Yeah,
either way,
yeah.
You can buy
or black soldier flies.
Right. Yeah. So it's more about the.
No, it's incredibly important. But yeah,
more about the messaging.
Yes, the philosophy is more important than the practicalities of how you're going to make it happen. If you have a wastewater treatment plant, just put incinerators everywhere and flush it down to your wastewater treatment plant because that's where you capture all the nutrients anyway. If you're in a smaller area, get it to the farmers first. You know, it's a matter of balancing transport and handling versus outcome, right? So if you're like me and the pigs are literally next door, the food goes into the pig pen.
Right.
If I have to drive 20 miles to the nearest pig farm, then it's a different calculation. And there's a metric, you know, like I'm sure there's just some coefficient of efficiency that you could eventually work out of like mileage, location, value of the food stuff, and, you know, nearness of a farm or soil. So
it is.
Wastewater treatment plants are an ecosystem on steroids. That's what it is. All the treatment is done by microbes. Right. Not by humans, not by heat. It's not an oven. There's not autoclaves.
But it's not representative of the ecosystem of the municipality. It's sort of like a weird, trumped-up version of like micro ecosystems that exist in nature. Right. With the microbes.
Right. But when you say trumped up, I mean like ramped up by a billion orders of magnitude. Mm. I've been inside digesters, and I've been inside of aeration basins, they call them. And you take, in the case of Tacoma, the actual sewage coming in is something like 30 million gallons a day of sewage. Gravity sorts the heavy stuff out. Mm-hmm. That's the sludge, and we take that and throw it into digesters. Aerobic and then anaerobic, that's what's unique about Tacoma. It has aerobic digesters as well as anaerobic.
That's not standard practice?
No. The vast, vast majority of wastewater treatment plants only have anaerobic digesters. It goes straight into an oxygen-free environment, makes a lot of methane. You burn the methane for heat, and then it goes out.
But that methane does get captured?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And it's very valuable, and you really do need to have the sludge digested in an anaerobic environment. And it reduces the volume of sludge by orders of magnitude, profoundly. The fats...
Which is also a thing you have to deal with, so...
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
The fats, you know, like what's a lipid? You know, glycerol with a long chain of hydrocarbons, basically. Well, what happens to it? Turns into methane. There's no oxygen, so the bacteria and the archaea chop up that hydrocarbon.
Archaea.
Yeah.
Are they in there?
Yeah. Methanogens.
Are you?
Yeah. Archaea are everywhere. I know.
T-shirt.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then, so that's the sludge.
I'd only heard of them in legend.
Right. But then the water portion left over, which is 99% as far as mass goes, is injected with activated sludge, you know, like older, it loops back on itself.
Okay.
It's injected with sludge and then aerated with either air or oxygen. And there's this, you talk about a plankton bloom. Mm-hmm. This is not photosynthetic, but it is a bloom of microbes.
Okay.
There's no photosynthesis. But all these microbes suddenly are given more food than they can deal with. colossal amounts of food. Everything that goes down the toilet. Everything dissolved. You've got sugars, you've got lipids, you've got proteins, all of it. And they go
non-photosynthesizing microbes, but
yeah.
Chompers. Mm-hmm. I'll think of them as chompers.
Digesters. An aeration basin is a massive stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Where
this may be wrong because it's a different flavor of single-celled microbe. If I remember right, yeast
is a fungus, actually.
Right, but they are single-celled, right?
Yeah, it's a single-celled fungus.
I remember, touring a local brewery.
There's a lot of similarities.
Someone, the brewer or one of the people there at Wingman, saying, in this, the volume of the yeast colony, X something, I can't remember if it was triples or quadruples or 10 times as much. There's a bloom in the yeast.
Yep.
And, until there's not, until they all die and we drink them.
Yep.
But just the amount that the colony expands, I thought was interesting.
It's colossal, yeah. And
you're feeding them, so it makes sense.
If you know how to brew, I could very easily use it as an analogy for a treatment plant and not be all that different. Everything people do in ecology at this level is basically let gravity, usually you have a separation point, some sort of filtration, and then you either add heat or nutrients and let microbes do their thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you separate again at the end into the products you want. Same with brewing, same with baking bread, same with wastewater treatment. Swear to God. And so in an aeration basin, you have this injection of microbes, this thick sludge, and all the food they could use, and enough oxygen and everything, and usually the right temperature that they want, and they go...
This is in Tacoma.
This is in Tacoma. This is in every wastewater treatment plant. Yeah. The difference in Tacoma has to do with the sludge, not the water. I'm talking about the water.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the sludge has already been taken away, the heavy stuff.
We're the only ones with aerobic and anaerobic.
Right.
But
that's with
aeration
sludge.
Basin.
Yeah,
so.
Aeration basin is with the water, how you treat the water.
I see.
They eat everything, nom, 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 nom. They're eating the sugars, the lipids, whatnot. And this is an aerobic environment.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take... After they've been there long enough, you flow it out, even though it's a continuous process. And then you put it in an environment where they don't have all the oxygen they need and they're out of food.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're going, oh no! And they die. And as they die, they filter down and they filter the water. They filter themselves. And the water that comes out flowing through that, because they settle down, they flocculate. And it settles down into another sludge.
The oxygen breathing and sludge eating microbes then die and
they settle down and they
flocculate.
Die. Yeah, and they don't die permanently. They go dormant, and you suck some of them up, and that's your return activated sludge. That's the part where you loop around. They go and then they go back, and then they go, oh, I'm back. I have food again, because you inject them into a 1,000,000-gallon tank where there's no flow and it's very still and very quiet, and there's no food and there's no oxygen. So what are they supposed to fucking do except sink?
Go to sleep.
Yep, go to sleep. They sink down, and that's how the water filters. And the stuff that comes out is your treated wastewater. And highly unfortunately, instead of turning that treated wastewater into like source nutrient and water for wetland recovery and whatnot, we inject it back into rivers, which we shouldn't. We should... Instead of injecting it into a river or the oceans, we should send it a mile inland and turn it into a swamp, because the world needs more swamps.
Mm-hmm. that was funny when I first remembered the Les Miserables earlier today. I was thinking about your anaerobic digester, and I was Googling biogas. And I was like, well, usually piles of junk are aerobic digesting piles, but in swampy, like the thing that you might DIY or buy for your backyard, does happen in nature,
Oh yeah,
in swamps, and I guess piles that have too much something or other in them and are deprived of oxygen. I don't know. But anyway.
I mean, you can create. It's very easy to create anaerobic conditions all over the place in small scale stuff. You know, just seal it away, and if there's enough biological oxygen demand or oxygen, it'll suck up all the oxygen, and then there's no oxygen. Tetanus. You know, it's a little pocket of anaerobic stuff in your body that produces. You know, it's crazy. Or like botulism in cans, anaerobic.
Ah, I see.
Yeah. If it's aerobic, if it's fully aerobic, you won't form botulism. That's why it only happens in cans and jars where there's no oxygen. Swear to God.
So these are critters that prefer to be anaerobic,
they have to be.
Are there a lot of I'm wondering? Are there a lot of critters that can do both, or
there's a few? There's
just a few, maybe.
Yeah, and I mean
And when I say critters, I'm including
microbes,
animalcules or whatever.
Right. There's not many. There's a few multicellular things. There's like nematodes and stuff that can live in like zero oxygen conditions. It's very strange. But most multicellular things, because of the energy requirements of being multicellular,
either one or the other.
No, they have to be aerobic.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
But
microbes.
How many microbes can do both?
There's facultative. I don't know.
That's a dumb question. How many? I didn't mean how many, but
billions. There's at least. There's many species.
I'm bebopping along. I've got oxygen. I'm not in your wastewater treatment plant,
right?
Because those guys were deprived of oxygen, and they said, "Oh, I'm done now. I'm going to sleep."
Yeah.
And I'm flocculating.
Yeah.
I mean, how many little
critters can do both?
Yeah.
Here's the thing. So the fundamental metabolic process that's kind of the core. And don't think about this in terms of space of like as if it was an actual functioning gear, but maybe the core metabolic process of all life is glycolysis, the splitting of the glucose molecule. And glycolysis
is sugary.
Yeah, breaking apart of sugars is anaerobic. It can be.
Interesting.
Yeah, the central part. And it seems that that's one of the core. So like 3 billion years ago, no oxygen in the atmosphere. Breaking that apart, it's kind of the core metabolic loop. And its genetics are the core, are the base of all the others.
It might not be the best, but it might be at the very center of all the others.
Yeah, because life evolved in anaerobic conditions.
Right.
We're the weirdos. And for half of life,
the anaerobic life had to exist
first
to make the oxygen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, but you're talking photosynthesis now. Glycolysis doesn't produce oxygen.
Oh, okay. All I remember is ATP.
Right. Glycolysis produces like 3 ATPs per glucose. If you have oxygen and you have that cascading chain down the cellular membrane, you can produce like 20 ATPs. So some microbes are able to go, oh shit, I'm out of oxygen. I'm just going to go to glycolysis now. But it's incredibly, the return on investment is very low.
I see.
You know, the electron chain. Cycle, something like that.
Electron Markov
transport chain, something. Yeah. Where you basically, it's water wheels is the way to think about it. Just going down, you produce an electrochemical gradient, and out comes ATP. Run your wheel. So there are a few microbes that can switch both, but in terms of efficiency, oxygen is profoundly better because it's a very powerful electron acceptor. It's very it's
hungry.
Yeah, it's hungry for electrons, and so you can use that as a gradient. It's the equivalent of a steep slope downhill. Like glycolysis is a dam on a very shallow sloped river. If you have oxygen as a electro, what the fuck is that word? Fluorine is the most electro something. How the hell am I forgetting this? Electron acceptor, the most powerful. You know, fluorine wants it more than oxygen, but they're kind of close at that end of the periodic table. So my chemistry professors are spinning in their graves. How the hell did I miss that? But oxygen is so powerfully attractive for electrons. It's basically the equivalent of a slope. You know,
I see.
Right.
So
in terms of ecological metabolic processes, you got to have oxygen. You just have to, So
Right. The alternative is a sort of a complex cellular machinery where with the presence of oxygen, it's just like this. I'm a chemical magnet.
it's
I
a
want
boost.
electrons.
Yeah. Hey, I'll do. Hey, you want to be you want to have several orders of magnitude more energy.
Here I am.
Yeah.
Until you run out of electrons. Right.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, yeah.
But
Bad language.
right. Well, you wouldn't run out of electrons. They would have nowhere to go, nowhere to flow downhill to. See.
Right. Yeah. Either one or the other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Both could happen.
Right, but you don't run out of electrons at the cellular level.
Okay,
they're all over the place.
You run out of oxygen with spaces in its outer valence shell or whatever.
Yeah.
Someday I'll brush up on my chemistry.
But I mean, that's why, like,
geez, you do have a lot of squash around.
Fuck,
they're multiplying.
Yeah,
it's like a horror movie. Every time I look over a shoulder,
there's more. They move. You need to take some home, man.
Sorry.
I can't eat them fast enough. But another thing, just kind of a basic thing for history of life on Earth. So multicellular stuff is only 500 million years old. 500 million years, roughly. That's Cambrian explosion to today. Well, life itself is 3.5 billion years. So 3 billion years is unicellular almost entirely. There's some really weird Edicarian, these weird trace fossils before the Cambrian explosion.
Oh,
and it's
really?
Like, what the fuck is that? Yeah, goofy stuff.
Oh,
it looks weird. They don't know if it's plant or animal. They have no idea.
But a few multicellular little
attempts
went away before the Cambrian.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Of course.
And
that makes sense.
And they're soft-bodied something they don't know. They literally look at it and it's like, I don't know what this is.
Not enough here.
Yeah, but it's 10 million years before the Cambrian explosion.
It's not all that long.
No, it isn't. Well, oxygen is only half of life on Earth. Okay, so what's 3.5 divided by 2? 1 3/4, right? So photosynthesis that corresponds to photosynthesis. So for half of life on Earth, no photosynthesis, unicellular, no oxygen. Okay? Then photosynthesis happens, but then you have something like 1 billion years where there's single-celled photosynthesis and oxygen does increase. They even call it like the oxygen catastrophe because it causes problems for all these things that are killed by oxygen.
Right.
And you have eukaryotes, but no multicellularity. See?
So
there's a long period where there's oxygen, but no multicellularity.
Oxygen and bounded nuclei?
Yeah.
If that's
eukaryotes are also fairly old.
If that's what eukaryote means, is a nucleus.
Yeah, true kernel, true nucleus. Yeah. It's goofy. And it seems that maybe
But not multicellular eukaryotes.
No, exactly. Yeah. Ciliates and paramecium and amoebas.
Amoeba that we all love, right?
Yeah. It's crazy. So there's
I got a tail. I got
bacteria
hair.
also have tails.
I got hairs.
Yeah, bacteria can be motile.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah. Dude, the mechanism they have for their tail is so fucking cool. It's a lot like the ATP generation. It just spins in one direction. Whoop! I have an oxygen gradient, protons, and they flow through the gears, and the gears turn. And I want to get away from light or towards it or whatever. It's awesome. Very different from the eukaryotes.
Tiny little robot.
It's a tiny little fucking robot. It's incredible.
It's just
so there's this long period where there's where there is oxygen, photosynthesis, but no multicellularity, and then you have the Cambrian explosion. So what the fuck? I don't know. It's nuts. There's no hand inside the glove of evolution. There's no designer behind the screen. It just happened.
The thought exists, but there's no thinker to be found.
Yeah, there's no the blind watchmaker. You think about it, and like I have to pull away from it when I think, like the universe is like simultaneously not alive because there's no God behind it. There's no intelligence. It's so even the matter of my body is technically inanimate.
Right.
Yet I am animate. Right? Yeah, right?
Seems like it.
Seems like I think I am. Here I am.
You look animated to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So turds.
Yeah, turds.
So yeah, in all that process of all that evolution, life is slowly increasing the amount of living material, right? Technically, in a sense,
As they put more meat on their meat machines.
yeah, as their guts get longer and the chains of ecosystems get longer and longer, and more inorganic matter gets incorporated into living matter, there's nothing tastier or more ready to be accessed by a metabolism than something that's already alive. Very few organisms are actually involved in unlocking an iron in this rock or a nitrogen. You know,
right.
the primary.
Who eats minerals?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, lichens. You know, certain bacteria, the nitrifiers, legumes. You know, the archaea in legumes. What are they? Zoobiota. What are they? Life.
yeah, that's right.
It's or Frankia and the microbes in that. Very few. It's like the primary parts of your economy, right? So the people doing the real work of the economy are the people who are mining, timber, extracting minerals. What else? Making chemicals. Or a big mineral we mine is petroleum. All those, that's a minor part of the economy. Everything else is secondary. It's all built up on it, all the way to a financial system. Yeah, same with an ecosystem. Secondary,
much easier to eat a
living thing than to eat a rock. It's much easier to get your nitrogen from a living thing.
Oh yeah, much much easier to predate a miner, a petroleum
consume
miner,
a miner,
than it is to actually pull the petroleum out.
Yeah. Oh man, this is how it all comes. We just made it full circle, didn't we? So like, we think, you think of a photosynthesizer that's pulling carbon dioxide, a non-living element, not an element, molecule, out of the atmosphere. Or a nitrogen fixer pulling nitrogen from an inanimate, non-living molecule and turning it into ammonia, nitrate in your body now. Even a bacteria has a body. It takes like 16 ATP to break apart a nitrogen one. It's incredibly expensive.
Expensive. Okay.
Yeah. You got to spend a lot of.
Who does it?
The
little guys or big guys?
Little guys. Only microbes. Only microbes can.
Microbes in plants?
Inside of plants. Yeah. So the zoobiota, zoobiote. What on earth is the legume name? For they have archaea that live in their nodules in legumes.
Yeah.
Alder
that's
trees.
What I thought you were saying.
Yeah, Frankia is another species of microbe that lives in the nodules of alder trees. Alders fix nitrogen. That's why they're so valuable.
I see.
And there also are nitrifiers, like even in the soil free living. But it's far better to have a big brother protector giving you a lot of sugar, like a legume.
Okay, I'm an archaeon.
Yeah.
I live in a legume leaf. Mm-hmm. I'm fixing nitrogen out of the atmosphere.
Yeah.
In my little single
in the root.
My little single-celled body.
Yeah.
Somehow.
And the action, believe it or not, those guys, they have to be in an oxygen-free environment that the legume has to provide in the nodule, right? So if you take a nodule, and I've done this myself personally.
I don't know what a nodule is.
It's a lump. It looks like a tumor on the root of a bean plant, And if it's fully functioning and it's alive and all that, pull out a bean plant or a soybean or whatever, some legume, and break apart the nodule with your fingernail, and it'll stain reddish for the exact same reason that your blood stains red. There's a chemical that the legume makes called leg hemoglobin. Because what does hemoglobin do? Binds to oxygen. We do it because we need to get oxygen deep inside our body from our lungs, this fucking pocket that's exposed to the outside, deep into our liver so that we can drink beer. The legume has to do it in order to suck up oxygen and keep it away from these guys who are fixing nitrogen, because their enzymes get broken apart by nitrogen. I mean, by oxygen. So they have to keep oxygen away.
Out.
So how do
They've
you
got
do?
hemoglobin.
They have
to
it-
keep
beans-
oxygen away
Yeah.
from the nitrogen
Yeah.
fixing archaea.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. And it stains the same color for the exact literal state. There's like iron in it.
We bleed the same.
Yeah, we bleed the same
red.
as legumes
And then legume nodules.
for the exact opposite reason. We bleed red because we need it.
Yeah.
They do it because they need to get rid of it. But it's a sponge
But they
for
both
oxygen.
needed. We
Yeah.
both needed hemoglobin.
Yeah. Like hemoglobin. And functionally, it's almost identical. Like if you put it in a scanning, if you...
Electron microscope. or
Yeah,
something?
yeah. And so in an ecosystem, those primary producers, the ones who are really doing the nuts and bolts of unlocking inorganic material and turning it into living material, are the same. These are your plankton and your nitrogen fixers and your photosynthesizers, who are really interfacing with the non-living world.
Mm-hmm.
They're a tiny part, but they're the source of it all.
Right.
Same as in our economies, miners, farmers. So you better get your decay mechanism right to minimize the amount of work that they have to do, because once it's in the system, you want to keep it in the system,
Otherwise, it's waste.
Otherwise it's poison. Yeah.
And waste and worse.
Yeah. Waste and worse.
Hmm.
Yeah. There's another, do you have any more quotes?
Yeah.
You got one?
Yeah. I don't
This is
know.
a wizard's duel.
Yeah. Well, you go first.
Okay, well, we may prohibit the exportation of our phosphorus, grind our limestone, and apply them to our fields. But this alone is only temporizing with the future. The more we produce, the more numerous our millions, the faster must present practices speed the waste to the sea, from whence neither money nor prayer can call them back. But if you have an upwelling, you can get it back.
Pretty
Turn
good.
it into guano.
There's some stuff in there that's more related. I just like this one because it name checked Rome and
Ooh.
some other stuff we
Yeah,
occasionally talk about historically. This is actually right after the name check of peasant of Fujian
Okay.
shrugging his shoulders.
Yeah. We mentioned one time that mountain of broken ceramics.
Oh,
in the
yeah?
center.
Mhm,
Yeah, it's called Mount Testaccio, or however you pronounce it in Italy. And it's just a symbol of waste. Like all the. Not only did the Romans waste the olive oil itself because they didn't recycle their manure back into the fields, but think of all the work that went into making the pottery and all the forests that had to be cut down to make the charcoal and all that shit. And now it's
To fire
yeah. And then all the human labor that went into bringing that shit across the Mediterranean in order to break it up and throw it in a pile because you didn't know how to deal with your own garbage. And you're going to be a civilization that lasts forever? Maybe you got what you deserved. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. That'll help. To copy Paris is to invite ruin, and Paris in this manner of immemorial and senseless waste copies herself. There is nothing new in her ineptitude. It is not a youthful folly. The ancients behaved like the moderns. The, quote, the cloaca of Rome, wrote Liebig, quote, absorbed all the well-being of the Roman peasant, end quote. When the Roman countryside was ruined by the Roman sewer, Rome exhausted Italy, and when she had poured Italy through her drains, she disposed of Sicily, then Sardinia, then Africa. The Roman sewer engulfed the world, sapping town and country alike. Urbi et orbi, or the eternal city, the bottomless drain.
Damn. I think that's a